Taiwan is red hot. On the 13th of January, the Democratic Progressive Party, with its new candidate, Lai Ching-te, won the presidential elections in Taiwan for the third consecutive time. But why is this so important? Well, because it is a major setback for China. Of all the possible options, this was by far the least desired by Xi Jinping. But it is done and dusted. Neither military threats nor political pressure have changed the majority sentiment in Taiwan.
Taiwan voters dismissed China warnings and hand ruling party a historic third consecutive presidential win. China threatened Taiwan again after Lai Ching-te victory in the island's presidential election. Reunification is inevitable.
This new stage comes at an absolutely crucial moment. You see, within the US military, there are senior officers who warn that between 2025 and 2027, China could try to invade the island. And yes, other voices delay this scenario by a few years, but that does not change the reality. Because if there is one thing that seems clear today, it is that the geopolitical and military risk is growing as the Chinese military continues to arm itself to the teeth. But if the most pessimistic US officials are right, and the conflict occurs between 2025 and 2027, this means that the Lai Ching-te government will be responsible for guaranteeing the defense of the island. That is why these latest elections have been absolutely key. And in the end, the result has been a blow to Beijing, which had hoped that Taiwan's political line would shift substantially. So with all that we are telling you, a few questions arise. Who is Lai Ching-te, and what will his victory mean for Taiwan-China relations? Why did the Taiwanese vote again for the party that most rejects ties with China? Well, we're going to tell you all this and much more. So let's get started. As in other East Asian countries such as South Korea, Taiwan's democracy is also very young. The island has held just 8 democratic elections since the mid-1990s. And VisualPolitik community, these most recent ones have been a bit special. Take a look at this chart for a moment. What you see are the results of the presidential election of a few days ago. And I'm sure you are already noticing one detail. Lai did not win with an absolute majority. And this, although not so rare, is important because in the previous elections of 2020, Tsai Ing-wen did sweep the field with more than 57% of the votes. In other words, the ruling party has lost 17 points of support in only 4 years. If in 2020 Tsai Ing-wen could be said to have caused a furore among Taiwanese, in 2024 we cannot say exactly the same about Lai. And it's not just about the presidential elections. In parliament, the ruling party has also lost 10 seats, and thus its absolute majority. In fact, the Kuomintang nationalists have outnumbered them by 1 seat due to the geographic distribution of the vote. Now, what exactly does this mean? Well, in a nutshell, that the political situation in Taiwan, far from simplifying, is getting much more complicated. VisualPolitik viewers, you can take it for granted that China will take advantage of a legislature without legislative majorities, in which the political forces will have to negotiate in a dogfight to have more influence on the country's policy. But first of all, I think there is one question we need to answer. What differentiates these major political parties from each other? What kind of relationship do they advocate having with China? And perhaps the most important question of all, are the Taiwanese shifting towards more pro-Beijing positions? Well, listen up. Traditionally, since the advent of democracy, Taiwan has been characterized by a two-party system. On the one hand, there was the Chinese Nationalist Party, or Kuomintang, and on the other, the Democratic Progressive Party. However, in this latest election, the two-party system has disappeared to make way for a third option for the presidency. But since most of you are not familiar with Taiwanese politics, let's take it one step at a time. Only then will we be able to understand Beijing's influence on the island in the coming years. To begin with, we have the Kuomintang, the, so to speak, traditional party, the party of a country's nationalist and military elite, which, nevertheless, surprisingly in recent years, has been turning to more pro-Beijing positions. And yes, the Kuomintang is the party of Chiang Kai-shek, the founder of Taiwan, who held power on the island with an iron fist for a quarter of a century. Chiang Kai-shek lost the war against the communists in mainland China, after which he went into exile on the island of Formosa in 1949. There, Chiang ensured the survival of the Republic of China, or at least what was left of it. In this way, he established an authoritarian and militaristic regime in Taiwan. The fact is that, for the Kuomintang, for many decades, the state of the Republic of China, which is still the official name of Taiwan, has been the legitimate China. From their perspective, the People's Republic of China, founded by Mao Zedong on the mainland, is a state born out of an illegitimate violent rebellion supported by foreign powers. Knowing this, you would expect the Kuomintang to be the party with the hardest positions against the Chinese regime, wouldn't you think? Well, nothing could be further from the truth. The Kuomintang used to consider the Republic of China as the only China, and that implies something important. Taiwan is not the People's Republic of China, but it is the true China, and the Taiwanese are, therefore, also Chinese. The point is that, over time, the Chinese sentiment of the Taiwanese has evaporated. To give you an idea, according to a survey conducted at the end of 2023 by the Pew Research Center, 67% of Taiwanese feel exclusively Taiwanese, 28% feel Taiwanese and Chinese, and only 3% feel Chinese. Obviously, this has been a brutal social change. So the Kuomintang has had to shift its positions, and the party has been forced to maintain a delicate balance between synergies with China and the country's independence. And as we were saying, this has resulted in the strange situation that what was once the anti-communist party par excellence is now the Taiwanese party that most advocates for smooth relations with the Beijing regime. But do you want some concrete examples? Well, keep in mind that between 2008 and 2016, the Kuomintang ruled the island. During that time, relations with Beijing improved so much that air and direct links with China were established, while at the same time, many investment restrictions were lifted in both territories for Chinese and Taiwanese investors and companies. In other words, the Kuomintang sought first and foremost to normalize its relations with Beijing, and in the end, that cost the party dearly. 2014 saw the emergence of the Sunflower Movement, a series of student protests in public buildings that erupted in the wake of the free trade agreement that the Kuomintang promoted between Taipei and Beijing.
If you were to become Taiwan's president, would you seek a meeting with Xi?
The most important thing at this stage is that we in Taiwan still have to stabilize this area in the Taiwan Strait. Therefore, we must first improve our own national defense armaments and our own self-defense capabilities. Of course, in the process of improvement, we will start with dialogue. With the current situations in Taiwan, in fact, we still have a long way to go.
Dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. The Kuomintang wants to improve relations with Beijing at all costs. In contrast, its great rival, the Democratic Progressive Party, which governs the island, is much more pro-sovereignty. The Democratic Progressive Party was founded in 1986, just when the political opening up allowed the formation of parties other than the Kuomintang. Well, this basically argues that Taiwan and China are different things, that Taiwan is an independent state, and that the histories of the two countries have long since slid down completely different paths. They are not in favor of declaring full independence, just because Beijing has said over and over again that such an action would be considered an act of war. Were it not for that, the Democratic Progressive Party would seek to have Taiwan declare its independence in order to become a normal country. But how does all this translate into action? Well, first of all, the governments of this party make China very angry, and it tends to raise the tone of its provocations and threats every time it wins an election. For example, during the Chen Shui-bian government, which ruled from 2000 to 2008, an official declaration was promoted that affirmed the existence of a national identity different from that of the mainland, a sort of light declaration of independence. At the same time, they advocated the enacting of a new constitution in line with these new expectations of autonomy and independence. In the end, a corruption case swept it all away and opened the door to the Kuomintang's return to power. Of course, that would not last long. In 2016, Tsai Ing-wen became the first woman to head the Taiwanese executive, and she did so largely thanks to her determination to separate the island's political identity from that of the mainland, and to do so to such an extent that the rest of the world take de jure future independence from Beijing for granted. This, by the way, is also advocated by her disciple and future president Lai Ching-te.
It is that Taiwan is already a sovereign, independent country called the Republic of China. It's not part of the People's Republic of China. The ROC and PRC are not subordinate to one another. It is not necessary to declare independence.
However, in the latest elections, a new formation has managed to break the two-party system. We're talking about the Taiwan People's Party. It's a party that emerged very recently, in 2019, and that in these latest elections has already won more than 22% of the votes. A meteoric rise. Now, who are they? Well, the Taiwan People's Party slaps the face of both the Kuomintang and the Democratic Progressive Party. Regarding Beijing, they believe that the current status quo should be maintained, although their campaign avoided talking much about this issue as unnecessary. Basically, let things stay as they are. So, in short, Taiwan has two political poles, one that advocates normalizing relations with China and one that advocates maintaining or strengthening the island's autonomy. Now, however, other questions arise. Why is the outcome of this latest election terrible news for the Beijing regime? Well, pay attention because I think you're going to be very surprised.
The end of the Chinese tall tale.
In Taiwan, appearances can be very deceiving, and as we've just seen, those who today call themselves nationalists are precisely those who want to get closer to Beijing. The Kuomintang seeks to keep the 1992 consensus alive as the basis for cross-strait relations. But wait a minute, what on earth is that? Well, in 1992, representatives of Communist China and the Kuomintang, which at that time ruled Taiwan, recognized the existence of a single China, but under the premise that both sides had a different interpretation of their identity. However, the Taiwanese opposition to the Kuomintang has always argued that this consensus cannot be understood as a state policy, but as a party policy. What's more, for Tsai Ing-wen, this consensus is nothing more than the one country, two systems policy, which by the way was already betrayed by Beijing in Hong Kong in 2019, so why repeat mistakes? Well, that's just it. The result of so much ambiguity and so much collegiality with China has led to the collapse of the Kuomintang, at least in terms of being able to govern. 3 legislatures out of power is not something that happens frequently for them. With the results of the latest elections, almost 7 out of 10 Taiwanese voted for an option contrary to the 1992 consensus, and therefore contrary to the idea that there is only one China. Of course, this has not taken Beijing by surprise. After all, the polls had already predicted it. The problem is that the crumbling of Kuomintang power also means the displacement of the only party with which Xi Jinping could consider a peaceful annexation. A Hong Kong-style solution for Taiwan, which has always been Beijing's big dream, is now completely unfeasible. It is out of the question. And what can I say? Let's not fool ourselves. Taiwan is a free country, a solid democracy, and a developed economy. The Taiwanese will never accept to become the new Hong Kongers, who were promised so much and in the end got nothing. But VisualPolitik community, on top of this huge sociological and political change, we have to add the profile of the president-elect. Lai Ching-te, who comes to the role from being Prime Minister between 2017 and 2019 and Vice President from 2020. Lai has been seen by voters as a continuist profile of the pro-autonomy stance maintained by Tsai Ing-wen since 2016. To top it off, his Vice President comes from being Taiwan's representative in the United States and is very pro-American. In other words, this government looks like it's going to have even closer ties with Washington. And I guess Xi Jinping is not at all amused by this either. Listen up.
Taiwan, no more, no less.
In the 1990s, when Taiwan's democratization was taking off, the majority of the population considered themselves both Taiwanese and Chinese. However, 3 decades later, the picture is totally different. As we have already told you, 2 out of 3 Taiwanese feel only Taiwanese, while those who feel only Chinese are disappearing from the map. This situation not only helps to understand the debacle of the nationalists, but also puts in check the logic of a single China. In other words, the Taiwanese are not only rejecting being part of the People's Republic of China, but also the idea that Taiwan is the Republic of China. In other words, Taiwan is Taiwan. Now, does this mean that the majority will support full independence? Well, no, it certainly does not. We have already told you that Beijing has repeated ad nauseum that it would never tolerate such a possibility and would consider it an act of war. And for that reason, the preferred option of the Taiwanese is to stay as they are, at least for now. Independence is almost as unpopular as as unification with the mainland. And that is precisely the reason for the strong growth of the Taiwan People's Party, which, as we have said before, defends looking the other way and keeping things as they are with China, while focusing its discourse on other issues.
Taiwan's young voters fret over material and existential issues. For one key constituency, elections, it's as much about more material issues such as wages, inflation, energy security, equality, and social justice.
The problem is that this clashes head-on with Beijing's aspirations. It's not the worst-case scenario for them, but it doesn't take the stone out of their shoe. So the new government will have to start thinking about how to defend Taiwan. The question is, what do you think they should do? Leave us your opinion down in the comments and let's start a debate. And as always, very important, if you like this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to VisualPolitik so you don't miss any news. Thank you very much for watching. All the best. See you next time.